All right, let's talk about how businesses really keep score. We hear all the time about companies making a profit, but is that the whole story? Not even close. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and demystify how businesses measure what truly matters, moving way beyond simple earnings to see what real performance and value look like. Okay, let's jump in. So, here's our roadmap. First, we'll look past basic profit to see what success really means. Then we'll get to know the financial scorecards that every single company uses. After that, we'll introduce a really powerful metric called RONA and unpack the two strategic engines that drive it. And finally, we'll tie it all together to talk about the ultimate goal, creating true undeniable value. Okay, section 1. Let's just dive in and tackle a huge misconception right off the bat. When you think of a successful company, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Probably making money, right? But here's the thing, just having some cash left over at the end of the year, well, that's not nearly enough to call a business a true success. You should think of this whole process kind of like detective work. Seriously, the numbers you see on a report, those are just the first clues. The real story, the actual health and the strategy of a business, is found when you start digging deeper and see how all those numbers connect with each other. And that brings us to the big question for this entire explainer. Is just making a profit really enough? I mean, if a company makes $1 million after all its bills are paid, that's got to be good, right? Well, the answer, and this might surprise you, is it depends. And here's why. On the one hand, you've got profit. It's just simple math, a subtraction. What you brought in minus what you spent. It's a flat number. But on the other hand, you have profitability. Now this is a rate of return. It's a division problem, and it answers a much, much more important question. For every single dollar we put into this business, how much did we get back out? That little shift in thinking from subtraction to division is everything. So if we're going to measure something like profitability, we obviously need the right tools. For any business, that means turning to two absolutely essential financial reports. Think of them as the company's official scorecard. First up, we've got the balance sheet. The easiest way to think about this one is like a photograph. It's a snapshot. It freezes a single moment in time, like midnight on December 31st, and it shows you exactly what the company owns, which we call its assets, and exactly what it owes to other people, its liabilities. And here's the cool part. It always has to balance, hence the name. On one side, you've got all the stuff, the factories, the computers, the cash. Those are the assets. And on the other side, you see where the money came from to buy all that stuff. It either came from borrowing, which are liabilities, or it came from the owners themselves, which is the equity. Now, if the balance sheet is a photo, then the income statement is a movie. It doesn't show you just one frozen moment. It tells you the story of how the business performed over a period of time, like an entire year. It tracks all the money coming in and all the money going out from start to finish. And this financial movie has a plot. It starts right at the top with total sales. Then it subtracts the direct costs of making the stuff it sold, and that gives you gross profit. Then it subtracts all the other day-to-day running costs, which gives you operating profit. Each step in the story tells you more and more about how efficiently the company is running, all the way down to the final bottom line. All right, now that we know our tools, the balance sheet and the income statement, we can introduce the real star of the show. We're going to take information from both of those reports and combine them to calculate one incredibly powerful metric for profitability called RONA. RONA stands for Return on Net Assets, and its whole job is to tell us how good the business itself is at making money, completely separate from how the owners decided to finance it. The formula is simple. You take the operating profit from that movie of an income statement, and you divide it by the net assets from that snapshot on the balance sheet. Simple, right? It's measuring the return on the core investment. So you're probably asking, what in the world are net assets? This is a really important detail. We start with all the company's assets, but then we subtract something called spontaneous resources. Basically, these are types of free financing that just kind of happen automatically while doing business. And we take them out because we only want to measure the return on the money that investors intentionally and purposefully put into the business. Let's make that super clear. On one side, you have your financial investors. Think banks and shareholders. They hand over money with one goal, to get a return on it. But on the other side, you have these spontaneous resources. The classic example is your suppliers. Let's say they give you 30 days to pay your bill. Well, for those 30 days, they're basically financing you, but it just happens spontaneously. They aren't trying to invest in you, they just want to get paid. So we subtract that free money to get to the real investment we need to measure. Okay, so we know what ROA is, but the real magic of this number is what it shows us about strategy. ROA reveals that there are two fundamental ways, two primary engines a company can use to be wildly profitable. So if we break the RONA formula apart, we see something amazing. Mathematically, RONA is just the result of multiplying two things together. Operating margin, which tells you how much profit you squeeze out of each dollar in sales, and asset turnover, which tells you how many dollars in sales you can generate from your assets. Margin times turnover equals RONA. And this leads us to a perfect analogy. You can be profitable like Ferrari, which is all about high margin. They use brand prestige and incredible engineering to sell a relatively small number of cars, but make a gigantic profit on every single one. Or you can be profitable like Fiat, which is all about high turnover. They focus on efficiency and affordability to sell a massive volume of cars, making just a tiny slice of profit on each. Both roads can lead to a fantastic ROI, but they are totally different strategies. Here are a couple more ways to picture it. The high margin strategy, the Ferrari strategy, is like having a few amazingly juicy oranges. You don't need a lot of them to get a whole pitcher of juice. The high turnover strategy, the Fiat way, is like a machine where you turn a crank and a little coin pops out. You succeed by just turning that crank again and again and again as fast as you can. So, what's the big takeaway here? It's that there's a trade-off. It is almost impossible for a company to have both super high margins and super high turnover. I mean, think about it. If you charge Ferrari prices, you're just not going to sell at Fiat volumes. A successful strategy usually means making a choice, picking which of these two engines you're going to build your business around. All right, for our last section, let's tie all of this together and talk about the real finish line. We figured out profitability, we understand the two strategic engines, but there is one final critical step. Because even a really high RONA doesn't automatically mean a company is truly winning. So let me ask you this. You're analyzing a company, and you calculate that its RONA is 25%. I mean, that sounds incredible, right? For every $100 invested, it's spitting out $25 in profit. That has to be good, doesn't it? And the answer, one last time, is it depends. It all depends on what investors expected to get for the risk they took. Every investment out there has what's called a required rate of return, like a hurdle the company has to clear. A business only creates real, actual value when its profitability leaps over that hurdle and delivers more than what was required. And this is my absolute favorite analogy for this. Picture yourself at the airport. You buy a chocolate bar for $12. You pay the money, they give you the chocolate. That's a fair exchange. You got what you paid for. That's not value creation. That's just a transaction. But what if they handed you the chocolate and said, oh, and here's a free tote bag too? That is value creation. You got more than you expected, more than you paid for. And that right there is the ultimate question we should be asking. When we look at a company or even at our own investments, are we just getting the chocolate bar we paid for, a fair deal? Or are we getting that unexpected extra, that free tote bag that signals real value is being created? That's the difference between a good business and a truly great one. Thanks so much for joining me.